Well, hello, church, and welcome to the Rewind for the week of February the 12th. I am standing in front of a stone wall. Probably not exactly like it, but similar to the wall that Joshua and the Israelites faced as they approached the city of Jericho. That is the story of Joshua chapter 6. This will probably be the fastest rewind that we have done to date because this rewind and this story is about doing rather than talking. So let's rewind the message from Sunday and then move forward and bring some walls down through the course of this week. All right, church, this past week we were in Joshua chapter 6. It is the story and the event of the walls of Jericho and how they come tumbling down. It is the story of big breakthroughs. God simply told Joshua and Israel, march around once for 6 days and then 7 times on the 7th day, and the walls will come tumbling down. I want to take you to an image and just talk through it with you. I think it demonstrates the complexity of the city of Jericho. It is an armored city like none had ever seen before that existed during that time. But it also demonstrates, because of its complexity, the amazing power of God that He demonstrated through a very quiet and obedient Israel as they simply just marched around the city. Okay, so what you have here is our best rendition of what Jericho actually looked like, how they constructed the city. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see that there are 2 walls. You have the outer retaining wall and you have the inner retaining wall. In between those 2 walls was a population of somewhere in the vicinity of 2, maybe 3,000 people that lived in that area. And then, of course, you had the bigger portion of the city that lived on the inside of the inner retaining wall. On the right-hand side of the screen, it actually shows you the height and the depth of the way they built Jericho. You have a retaining wall on the outer side that's 12 to 15 feet high, and then you have on top of that a wall that is 6 feet thick, made of mud, brick, that extends all the way up, making the outer retaining wall somewhere in the area of 20 to 26 feet high. In between the outer wall and the inner wall, you have 6 acres of land. That's where all these folks are living right there. 6 acres of land that separates the outer wall to the inner wall. And by the time you get to the top of the inner wall, from the ground level where Joshua and Israel would have been walking around, is 46 feet high. Jericho was built as a fortress. So you can see from the images the amazing complexity and the fortified nature of Jericho as a city, which stacked up against that shows even more fully the amazing, awesome power and promise of God as He allows an ill-equipped, undernourished, unprepared army to bring down one of the most fortified cities that existed to date. We talked about 4 merges on Sunday. We talked about how we don't need to be surprised when we enter into the Promised Land, that is where the real battles begin. We discussed how we need to develop the habit of learning to walk daily around the walls that are keeping us and holding us back from experiencing the full promise of God. We talked about we need to stop talking and become a people who start doing. And then we discussed how our old way of life cannot be the way we live in our new world, that things have to change. There's a stone wall somewhere in your world. I don't know where that is and what it's fortifying itself against. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's health, maybe it's finances, maybe it's concerning our kids or our work or our faith, but it is fortifying itself and keeping you back from experiencing the fullness of the promise that God has for you in that area of life. The testimony and the witness of Joshua chapter 6 is that wall can, that wall will, and that wall must come down in the name of Jesus. All we have to do is begin to march around. Now here's the cool thing. Before Joshua and Israel even took a step around the city, God had already developed and delivered the victory in that moment and for that situation. He did it for them. He will do it for you and I. All we have to do is trust and have faith and be obedient and walk with confidence, knowing that in every step that we take, God is going to bring these walls down. And before you know it, you've walked around the city. Maybe that first step is money not spent. Maybe that first step is a kind word or patience shown. Maybe that first step is walking into work and demonstrating something different or spending some time alone with God in prayer. But it's the first step, and as we take the first step, we'll take the next. And before you know it, we've walked around the city. Now, maybe it won't take 7 days. Maybe it'll take 17. Maybe it'll take 70. Maybe it'll take 700. I have no idea. Maybe that depends on the wall and how thick that wall is. Maybe it depends on God's purpose for you as you march around that wall. But I do know this, That wall will come down. It must come down. When it comes down, we will rush in and experience the fullness of the promise that God has carved out for us. So let's not talk about it this week, church. Let's do it. Let's identify where those walls are and begin to confidently, obediently, trustingly, faithfully march around the city so that God will bring those walls down. So that's the rewind for the week of February the 12th. I hope you have a blessed week, church. Let's start walking around and bringing those walls down so that we can experience the fullness of everything God has. Have a great week, church, and we'll see you soon.